Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and of course with Elvis there. You must forgive me, I've got a bit of a sore throat. I have been suffering again from a cold. It seems I started November with one and I was destined to finish November with one. So in this weekly roundup, I haven't really got much to say this week because most of the week was spent at home in bed recuperating. Or a large part of the week, I should say, was spent at home in bed recuperating. I did have 2 COVID tests. Thankfully, both were negative, so that's okay. I guess it's one of the hazards and dangers of working in school, especially as a teacher who teaches all grades from 6-year-olds up to 15-year-olds. So I run the full gamut of germ infections and that kind of stuff, I guess. And I have to say, even from a reading standpoint, the week wasn't super productive either. I guess with sinus problems and whatever, I suffered a bit from headaches, so I didn't find it very comfortable to get much reading done. Although I did manage to read a little, I carried on with Chris Matthews' Jack Kennedy book, which we're buddy reading with Very Literary Carrie, although she's finished it and probably moved on, moved on to other things and pastures new. I'm now currently on chapter 11, and I've got, I think, maybe 5 chapters left, but it's very good. Although I have to say it's a strange book because it started out with hero worship, really, in the way it depicted Kennedy, and I thought, oh yeah, maybe this author really likes him too much, but I have to say he's become certainly more balanced in the view that he presents of Kennedy, and not being somebody who knows very much about him, I feel a little, what's the word, a little bit like I don't like him that much, and I will tell more when I finish the book and review it properly, but he certainly has some very unlikable characteristics. I wonder if Carrie noticed those things as well. I shall certainly confirm with her and discuss with her before I talk about it further in an upcoming video when I finish the book. I'm also continuing in Michael Chabon's The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. We've got pretty much to the end of this month, December, to finish it, so of course that will be part of my December reading list. To wrap up November, I read 5 books. 2 of them were audiobooks. They were Scoop, which was our pick for the Humorous Book of the Month Club. That's Scoop by Evelyn Waugh. Then there was Fallen Idols, 12 Statues That Made History, which I made a video on, and you can certainly check that out if you're interested. It was a very interesting book. I listened to Andrew Roberts' Napoleon: A Life, or titled Napoleon the Great in America, which was a really interesting and in-depth biography of Napoleon Bonaparte. And another audiobook that I listened to was Travels with George in Search of Washington and His Legacy by Nathaniel Philbrick. And that was a charming kind of road trip biography of Washington, but also a little bit memoir of the author, as there was quite a few personal touches in that, and that was really nice. And I think it lent itself very well to being an audiobook. The one I really want to talk about today was a buddy read I did with Faith from Faith&Books, and it was a really fantastic read, and it's certainly up there in one of my top books for the year, and that's A Sense of the World, How a Blind Man Became History's Greatest Traveler, and that was by Jason Roberts. I can show you a picture of it here. I've got the where is it? The Goodreads thing there. I don't know if it will zoom in, probably not, and there's too much glare. Oh, well, that was pointless, wasn't it? I read it as an ebook on the Kindle, and it was really really fantastic. Oh, here we go. That will do. There you go. If you can see that better there, A Sense of the World by Jason Roberts, and it follows the story of James Holman, who joined the Royal Navy as a young man. I think from around the age of 11, if I remember rightly, and he served for several years on the North America station out of Halifax in Nova Scotia, and he was exposed to quite extreme temperatures as he sailed up and down the eastern seaboard of North America, and he took ill with a form of extreme rheumatism, and he spent several months off and on in hospital, and then eventually one day, after a splitting headache, he kind of woke up blind, and he was still then in his early 20s, and of course it changed his entire life, because going blind in the early 19th century, I mean, going blind anytime is horrific, but of course in the early 19th century it would have been no picnic, because he would have lost his income. He probably would have had no recourse, as he wasn't from a particularly wealthy family, but to turn to begging. But he was a very clever and resourceful young man, and he was able to come up with some ideas as to how to avoid penury. What was interesting as well is how Roberts talks about different medical treatments available for blindness in those days, and they were pretty horrific, as you can well imagine. Holman, who very sadly isn't well known today, certainly should be. He was incredibly intrepid. He was a very prodigious writer. He wrote at least, I think, 5 books, although they're not particularly easy to get hold of today. You can download volume 1 of his Circumnavigation of the World from Project Gutenberg, which I have done, and I will plan to read at some point. It's quite incredible, really, the journeys he's able to undertake and the different characters and people he meets along the way. He goes across the Russian Empire pretty much until he's turned around sometime after Irkutsk, and he, as I say, circumnavigates the globe as well. And I will read to you just a little bit from this book, and you can get an idea of how well written it is, and how it's full of really interesting information. One of the things I found particularly fascinating actually was how Holman was able to write down his experiences. He had a thing called a noctograph, which was a machine basically that was should have been used by the military for military intelligence, for people to write messages and things at night, and he adapted it and used it for his blindness. Now obviously he wasn't able to write full books and things on it, but he took it everywhere wherever he went, and he was able to keep copious notes about his adventures. He also had a fantastic memory as well, which enabled him to remember all sorts of things. He was also a member of the Royal Society, and he made very many and influential friends through his membership to that organization. But as I say, I'll read to you a little bit from this, and one of the really interesting parts, I think, of the book here. Holman carried the momentum of physical exertion into the city itself, bounding up Trajan's Pillar and the Palatine Hill, the Tarpeian Rock, and even Monte Testaccio, not a mountain but an ancient trash heap, all in a single day, much to the exhaustion of his hired guide. He'd been indifferent to Paris, largely because the sights there were just that, sights meant to be gazed upon. But much of Rome's grandeur was more to be evoked than seen, especially since many monuments, since reconstructed, were, at the time, little more than piles of stone in neglected fields. He was as well equipped as anyone to run his hand across a section of long scattered column and mentally reassemble it whole, or to pace a battered, weedy foundation and imagine when the ground was not the Campo Vacchio cow pasture, but the Forum Romanum. Some tactile pleasures had to be taken furtively. The Vatican sculpture collection was off limits to touch and thickly guarded by soldiers. He made confederates of fellow art lovers who kindly cued him when the soldiers' backs were turned. There were also auditory pleasures. The onset of Easter may have dulled the nightlife in Florence, but here it prompted a profusion of sound, cannon salutes and open-air bands and concerts of sacred song. He found the a cappella concerts especially rapturous. Holman knew no one in Rome, but he did have a letter of introduction to Dr. James Clark, an expatriate Scotsman who quickly became a friend and whose friendship would be a crucial asset in years to come. They had much to talk about. In fact, it's surprising they hadn't met sooner, as their lives had long run in parallel. Clark, slightly younger than Holman, had interrupted his Edinburgh medical studies to join the Royal Navy. I'll just stop there just to say that it was also an incredible thing that Holman took himself off to university to study medicine, while he was blind, because he wanted to get some kind of understanding of his condition. And it was pretty much amazing that he was able to go out there by himself, attend lectures, and get to learn more about medicine, although it didn't particularly help him with his own condition. But it was, as I say, he's just a remarkable person. When Holman was struggling to keep his commission on the Gruyere, Clark was an assistant surgeon on the Thistle, stationed out of the same harbour. Idled on half pay after the peace, he'd resumed his long-deferred medical education and graduated from Edinburgh in the same year as Holman. He'd even made a leisurely trip through the south of France a year in advance of Holman, sampling and analysing the same mineral waters the latter had found so therapeutic. Now he was writing a book on those mineral waters and establishing a practice tending to English-speaking invalids in Rome for their health. Like Holman, he was an advocate of fresh air and physical exercise, and a literary gentleman, not a poet himself, but an admirer of the art. The two hit it off so well that Holman soon shifted from his hotel to a boarding establishment only a few steps away from Clark's house in the Piazza di Spagna, a move suggested and arranged by the doctor himself. Clark perhaps neglected to mention how he knew of the vacancy. These lodgings were the recent scene of the drawn-out agonizing death of one of the patients, another young Englishman, this one so poor that his friends had taken up a collection to send him here. His British doctors were unanimous in their opinion that he was dying of tuberculosis and should stay abed, but Clark had made a maverick diagnosis of stomach trouble and prescribed not rest but exercise. Unfortunately, the patient proved the doctor wrong by collapsing and coughing up copious quantities of blood. He sank into a months-long decline, so tortuous that towards the end he'd wake up, discover he was still alive, and start crying. When the end arrived at last, Clark sentimentally commissioned a death mask of the young man, who had shown some promise as a poet. Holman moved in a few weeks later, by all accounts unaware of his predecessor at this address. If anyone mentioned the name to him, he probably didn't recognize it. Only the poet's last volume had gathered even modest attention, and it was published after Holman had departed for the continent. Number 26, Piazza di Spagna, has since become a popular pilgrimage, a meticulously preserved shrine to the memory of John Keats. And I think that's really nice how he kind of introduces the fact that Holman, who was himself somewhat of a poet, ended up spending time in the last and final resting place, if you like, or destination of the famous poet John Keats, and how, of course, little Keats was known in his own lifetime. As I said, I really enjoyed this book. It was pretty much unputdownable for me, and Faith, of course, was a fantastic buddy-to-buddy read with. I would recommend anybody to check out A Sense of the World by Jason Roberts. It really, you will not regret it. It's certainly something different, and it's full of a lot of information about the world in which Holman lives in, as well as Holman himself. So yeah, if you have a chance, definitely get a hold of it. So it's December, and what am I going to read? Well, I've already mentioned I have to finish the Jack Kennedy book, Jack Kennedy, An Elusive Hero, by Chris Matthews, and I have to finish The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. I plan also to read some other books that I've yet to finish from previous months that I've put on the back burner. That will include things like finishing up Lorna Doone and Herodotus histories. It's unfortunate I've been delayed in a few of these readings, but I do plan to get them all read, and certainly I'm looking forward to having a bit of time at Christmas to do so. This week I've also listened to quite a few things, and I like, if possible, if I find something I think worth recommending, I shall certainly let you know. And one of the things I really enjoyed was a program from the BBC. It went back to August of this year, but it's available on BBC Sounds, and it's called This Union, The Ghost Kingdoms of England. And for anyone who's interested in Anglo-Saxon history, this is a really nice little show of 4 half-hour radio programs that look at the 4 kingdoms of Anglo-Saxon Britain. Those of I can't think of the first one. I was going to say I've got the other 3 in my head. Those of East Anglia, Northumbria, Mercia, and of course Wessex. And Ian Hislop, if you don't know him, is a really good television personality, radio personality in Britain, and editor of the satirical newspaper, magazine, journal, whatever you want to call it, Private Eye, which is a very funny publication. Coming up over the course of the next week, I don't really know what's going to happen. I hope to be back at school on Monday. Looking forward to that. Obviously, it's been nice to be at home with Elvis. You can see he's quite tired out. We've just come back from our second morning walk of the day. It's very, very cold here. It's about -7 at the moment, and there's no snow left from last week, sadly. And it just feels extremely cold when the wind blows, but it's nice and warm in here, so that's something. Anyway, I hope everybody is doing well and that you all remain healthy, and I look forward very much to seeing you all again next time. Do take care, everybody. All the best from us. Bye-bye.